Welcome to the whole Santa Barbara community and our guest speakers to our League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara Free Community Forum on Community Choice Aggregation. My name is Joni Jones, and I'm co-president of the League and invite you to join the League if you are 18 years or older. You will find that it is an informative group of women and men who enjoy learning and helping others to become informed voters. Join the League now, and our new membership year begins on July 1st. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Colin Jones, our moderator, to introduce our topic and our guest presenters. Colin.
Hello, I'm Colin Jones. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and a member of the Sustainable Communities Committee. One of the League of Women Voters' activities is to study issues. After the studies, votes are taken to see if there's a consensus on opinions or issues. The League has studied and voted to take a position on climate change. Climate change is the greatest environmental challenge of our generation. The League works to build grassroots support for action on climate change nationally and at the state and local levels in order to avoid irrevocable damage to our planet. Okay, this session today is on should the local area form a CCA? And a CCA is a community choice aggregation to buy clean, renewable power for the area. And it's sponsored by the League of Women Voters and CEC, the Community Environmental Council. Okay, the local league group that I'm on, the Sustainable Communities Committee, has been attending a South Coast Forum held at the university on sustainability. And for the last 2 years, there's been a major topic at these conferences, and that is the CCA movement, which started in Massachusetts and is spreading across the country and has now started to take root in California. Community choice aggregations are local agencies set up to purchase high percentages of renewable power. The committee members attending these conferences came away very interested in CCAs. The CCA concept has proven to be very effective in combating climate change by cutting greenhouse gases, and they do this by investing in renewable energy, improving electrical efficiency, and doing this locally. And given the limited power of the federal government to act on climate change, local action is, we feel, to be very important. CCAs also have a number of other benefits that will be covered by our speakers. We, in our group, had not heard of CCAs before attending the UCSB conferences. And the people we talked to had also not heard of CCAs. But we feel it is now time to start introducing the CCA concept to the Santa Barbara community. Our speakers are Jefferson Litton from the Community Environmental Council, here. He has been working on the CCA outreach and with our local governments to see if we can form a local CCA. Joe Galliani is from the newest forming CCA area in the state of California, and that's in the Los Angeles County area, and it's called South Bay Clean Power. Originally scheduled speakers Salud Carbajal and Janet Wolf, the county supervisors. Unfortunately, both ended up with conflicts today. Eric Friedman, who is with Salud Carvajal's office, is here representing Salud. I'll give background information on our two speakers, and then we'll start the talks. Jefferson Litton is the Energy Program Manager at Community Environmental Council. At CEC, Mr. Litton has directed and implemented 10 community-wide group purchasing programs for residential solar systems. He has helped 400 Central Coast homeowners to add a collective 2 megawatts of new solar power to the region. Prior to joining CEC, Mr. Litton worked as a project analyst at Chaplin Energy, a wind energy development firm. Jefferson sits on the board for the U.S. Green Business Council, the Central Coast chapter, and holds a master's degree in energy and climate from the Bren School at UCSB. One of CEC's top priorities in 2015 is the formation of a local community choice program to provide clean, renewable local power. And Jefferson has been leading in that effort. Okay, introduce the second speaker too. Joe Galliani has been an organizer of the South Bay 350 Climate Action Group since 2009. A co-founder of the Hermosa Beach Carbon Neutral City Initiative in 2010, he also co-created the MB 2025, a 100% renewable power Manhattan Beach by 2025 program. In June 2014, Joe became the chair of South Bay Clean Power Working Group, an ad hoc citizens initiative to launch a CCA within the 15 cities of South Bay and Los Angeles County. The cities of Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, Santa Monica, Redondo Beach, Torrance, Carson have each passed resolutions to participate in a CCA feasibility study. Last month, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a motion to provide a feasibility study funding. Joe was recently named to the steering committee of the statewide Californians for Energy Choice Coalition. So those are our two speakers. I'm going to start with Jefferson.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Colin. And a big thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum today. I'm happy to see that so many people in the room are interested in learning about community choice. I also want to thank Joe Galliani for coming up. I'm excited to hear about their successes and their progresses down in South Bay with South Bay Clean Power. I'd also like to recognize, if you hit F5, I think it'll pull the whole thing up. Hillary Campbell representing Supervisor Wolf's office here as well. So first of all, I want to sort of offer a little bit of a clarification, perhaps an apology. The community choice aggregation movement, and I think it's fair to call it a movement or CCA movement, is undergoing a little bit of a rebranding right now because it's sort of unclear, ambiguous what exactly aggregation means. So now when we talk about CCA, we talk about it as community choice or community choice energy. And I think that that name makes a lot more sense because really at its root, what community choice energy is communities demanding that now they have a choice in where their energy comes from. And they want the choice to have cleaner energy with more renewables and less greenhouse gas emissions associated with it. So as I go through this talk today, I'll be referring to which you've heard as CCA, as community choice or community choice energy. But I might even slip up and call it CCA because it is a transition. So first of all, what I'm going to talk about today, what is community choice energy? How does it work? And as we understand how community choice energy works, we can start to explore the many benefits that community choice energy offers. Now, launching a community choice energy program does entail some risk, and I believe it's important that we understand completely what the risks are of community choice energy formation. And then lastly, we'll take a look at what's going on right now in Santa Barbara County around community choice energy and what our path forward is as a community to make community choice a reality here in Santa Barbara. So community choice energy, it's not revolutionary, it does not require an upheaval. It simply requires that cities or counties, or groups of cities and counties, create a new public agency that is responsible for procuring the power for its residents. Okay? It's as simple as that. They are responsible for making sure where we purchase our power from, and that's entering into contracts with power purchase providers. The transmission and the delivery still takes place via the existing utility, be it Southern California Edison here in South County or in North County, Pacific Gas and Electric. Now, making this simple change, allowing a community to choose where their power comes from, offers communities a host of benefits that we're going to explore in a little bit more detail. Now, I want to make something explicitly clear. A community choice program does not replace the existing utility. Okay? It is a partnership with the existing utility where the community choice program is responsible for procuring the power, and the delivery and the transmission of that power still takes place via Edison or PG&E lines. So, community choice on its front is not necessarily an immediate solution to the transmission and grid reliability issues that we're facing in Santa Barbara right now. But community choice offers the opportunity for a host of new programs, things like microgrids, which the World Business Academy is working on right now, which can increase the resiliency of our grid. And billing would still take place via your existing utility. Now, if you did not want to participate in a community choice program, all you have to do is simply opt out, and you'll still be with the existing utility. To explore billing in a little bit more detail, this is a sample bill from one of the existing community choice programs up in Sonoma. And on your bill, it still comes from PG&E, and that bill shows two things. It shows a generation charge and a transmission or a delivery charge. That delivery charge is still going to PG&E to cover their costs for getting that power to your home. The generation charge goes to your local community choice program. In this case, it's Sonoma Clean Power. And those revenues stay local, making possible a host of new local programs. Now, to form a community choice program, it requires the formation of a joint powers agency or joint powers authority. That joint powers authority would be set up as a not-for-profit agency funded entirely by the revenues that the program generates. So there's no tax dollars that would be allocated towards a community choice program. Fortunately, in California, we have proof, solid proof, that community choice energy works. There are two existing community choice energy programs in California, Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power, and soon later this year, we're going to have Lancaster Choice Energy, the first community choice program in Edison territory. And what these two existing programs have shown us is that community choice delivers cleaner energy with more renewables and less greenhouse gas emissions at rates cheaper than the existing utility, which I think is just absolutely fabulous, and it's a case in itself for community choice. Community choice also offers consumers something that they've never ever had before in their energy provider, and that is choice and competition. Okay? All the revenue that a community choice program generates stays within that community. Okay? In Sonoma, they calculated when they were launching that $180 million were leaving the community each year to go to the utility. Now through Sonoma Clean Power, that money stays within the community and can go into local programs, promoting local renewables, promoting energy efficiency, promoting microgrids. And then lastly, community choice offers local control. That JPA that I talked about would be, the board members would all be representatives of our local cities and local counties, making choices representing what we as a community think is a priority. The amount of greenhouse gas reductions that we want to see, or the greenhouse gas emissions we want to see associated, the rates that we want to see, the amount of renewables that we want to see, all set here locally. This is two sample rates from the existing community choice programs, Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power. So you can see here in both programs, they offer their consumers a host of choices in what sort of power that they can get. They have their basic offerings, the Clean Start and the Light Green, which in both cases offers a higher percentage of renewables than the existing utility, and it's cheaper, as you can see on the bottom line. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But they also offer options for even more renewable energy mixes. In both cases, you get 100% renewables. There's a bit of a premium for that, but they're finding that still there are consumers many consumers that want to see 100% renewables. Now, taking a look at the Marin example right here, it's just about $2 cheaper than PG&E's rate for your average residential consumer. It might not seem like that much, but taken on aggregate, at the time of this graph, Marin Clean Energy's 44,000 customers seeing that savings save on aggregate $6 million a year. So that's $6 million staying in local residents' pockets that can be invested into the local economy. What I really get excited about community choice energy is the possibilities that it opens, the local control. So with that revenue staying local, you can start creating new programs incentivizing local renewable generation, incentivizing microgrids, incentivizing energy efficiency programs that respond to our community's needs. So Sonoma and Marin have shown that you can set up things like a more favorable rate for net energy metering. So saying that we're going to pay you a premium on any excess solar that your solar panels generate, so it makes it a better investment for you as a homeowner. You can also set feed-in tariffs and say, my community choice energy program is willing to pay this amount per kilowatt hour for any solar that you generate. So then you can start approaching businesses, parking lots, and roofs with all this open space and say, why don't you put solar panels up there? And you start getting generation closer to its load. So through things like this, microgrids, energy storage, we can convert all this unused rooftops, all these unused parking lots into local sources of power. And I find this super exciting. So as we look towards community choice formation, it's very important that we understand the risks. And there are indeed risks. The first risk is price. How are you going to compete on price with the existing utility? There's a couple things that works towards a community choice program's advantage. One is that utility is purchasing power on the same open market that a community choice program would be. So if costs go up on that market, both the existing utility and the community choice program are seeing those same costs. But as a community choice program is set up, it's set up as a nonprofit agency. So it does not have to pay taxes. And unlike a utility, a community choice program does not have to pay a guaranteed return to all of its investors. So given those 2 points, community choice programs can offer highly competitive rates for a cleaner energy mix. And we've seen this play out in Marin and Sonoma. There is a political risk. Community choice is change. And we all know that change is hard. So it falls on us as a community, the people in this room, to make it expressly clear to our elected officials that we want community choice here in Santa Barbara County. And by doing that, we give them the political cover for them to be courageous champions that make community choice a reality here in Santa Barbara. There are opponents to community choice out there. When Marin Clean Energy started launching, PG&E spent upwards of $40 million to try to defeat that program. And we've seen challenges as late as last year with AB 2145, which would change the structure of how you opt out or opt in to a community choice program. So these challenges have come up, but the community choice energy movement has shown that it is strong, resilient, and united, thanks in part to people like Joe over here, who's one of the leaders on the Californians for Energy Choice group, which is basically a statewide coalition of people like us working in their communities to advance community choice. It's also important that we understand what the worst case scenario is for community choice formation. And what the worst case scenario is, it's pretty simple. Your program fails. Rates become too high for some reason, people start opting out, going back to the utility, your community choice program fails. And what happens if that's the case? There's really no interruption that you would see as a homeowner. You simply, or as a consumer, you simply would shift back to the existing utility. The community choice program is required to purchase bonds at formation that would cover all of the costs in the case of a failure. So you're protected. And the Joint Powers Authority protects the cities and the counties. It creates a firewall that protects the cities and the counties from any potential failure. So it's important that we talk a little bit about what this JPA is, the Joint Powers Authority. It would be a new government agency funded, like I mentioned before, entirely by revenues that the program generates. Each county or city that's a member of that community choice program would have representation on that board. So then you get that local control and local accountability. And that JPA creates a separate agency outside of cities and counties, which would protect their budgets in case of anything going wrong. Where is California as a state around community choice? All the cities and the counties that you see listed in this graph have already passed resolutions to explore community choice or to fund a feasibility study. So you can see that it's a movement with a tremendous amount of momentum right now, and there's communities all across the state that are excited about community choice and making it happen. And I say that it's time that we add Santa Barbara County and all of our local cities to this list. Where do we stand right now in Santa Barbara County? What this graph depicts here is the climate action plans from 4 local jurisdictions. And in every single one of these climate action plans, the single most impactful measure that the county or city can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is joining a community choice program. In some cases, as much as 30% of the county's target reductions are through a community choice program. So the government and staff has recognized the potential of community choice. Now we just have to make it happen. So how do we make that happen? The first is coalition building. Community choice does not happen here in Santa Barbara County unless we as a community demand that it happens. And what that requires is that we have community leaders and business leaders willing to go out there and engage and enlist their peers in support of community choice, and go out and talk to their local officials and tell them that we want community choice to happen here. When that happens, when our officials hear the political will that we of a community have, then they become the champions that move community choice forward in our local governments. A key and essential step that we see in developing this support is a feasibility study. What a feasibility study does is it answers a lot of the questions that we have around community choice that we don't quite have answers to right now. You know, questions like, how many users does it take to make a community choice program viable? What are the greenhouse gas reductions that we can achieve through a community choice program? And what are the rates that a community choice program could offer to our local communities? So, equipped with this feasibility study, we have hard numbers to those hard answers to those hard questions that we can go back and rally the support that we need to make this actually happen. There are some other options that we could join an existing community choice program, but right now we're really at a critical juncture for getting this feasibility study funded. What's happening with our local governments? So right now, all of our local governments, our cities and counties, are about to enter into budget hearings for their allocations coming up for 2015 and 2016. So it's really, really a critical time that we start moving community choice towards the forefront. At the city, a couple months ago, we met before the City Sustainability Committee and presented community choice. There's many of you in this room that were actually there at that meeting and spoke in support of community choice. So I thank all of you. And the committee heard us and they listened. So now city staff is exploring community choice, and they are going to be bringing it up as a budget hearing likely in May. So once we know when community choice is going to be coming before council, we'll reach out and let you know. We actually have an email sign-up sheet back there on the table. So if you're interested in getting an update about what's happening around community choice, definitely leave your email there and we'll let you know. On the 21st, next week is when we're expecting the city's recommended budget to come out. Once we see that budget, we'll be able to see what sort of allocation they've initially made towards community choice, and that'll kind of give us an idea of how hard we really need to push at City Council. At the county, we've had very, very encouraging meetings with Supervisor Carbajal and Supervisor Wolf, who are both represented here today, as well as with Glenn Russell, the Director of Planning and Development. And that issue is coming up at the county on May 5th. So May 5th, Glenn Russell will present the staff report, and then the Community Environmental Council will have about 10 or 15 minutes to present after that. I encourage everyone in this room to attend that board hearing. We really want to pack that room and make our voices heard at the board that we want community choice to happen. Another event occurring, not exactly locally, but I think it's a really important event, is on May 18th. Lean USA, one of the national organizers of the community choice movement, as well as the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition, are hosting a forum for local governments explicitly about community choice. So we've encouraged our city officials to go and attend that meeting. I encourage you to go attend that meeting as well. I think you might find it very informative. And also let the officials know they should go too. So that's the Biltmore. I'll send out more details about that to anybody that signs up. It's not free. You do have to pay for it to attend that. So lastly, in conclusion, this is not the first time that we've talked about community choice here in Santa Barbara, but it's a critical time that we take action on community choice. Marin and Sonoma have proven that community choice energy offers cleaner energy at cheaper rates, tangible greenhouse gas reductions, and a myriad of local benefits. Lancaster Choice Energy has proven that community choice is a possibility here in Southern California Edison territory. Our local climate action plans have identified that community choice is the most powerful tool that our local governments can employ to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I say it is now the time that we make community choice a reality here in Santa Barbara County. Thank you guys very much. All right, so now it's my great pleasure to introduce Joe Galliani from South Bay Clean Power.
Well, while we're doing our technical advisement here, and thank you, Jefferson, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be here in Santa Barbara, one of my favorite cities in the state of California. And it's always a pleasure to be with the League of Women Voters. Our League of Women Voters in my own community, very active on issues that we care so much about. And in fact, I will tell you that inspired by this presentation and forum that you're putting on today, our South Bay League of Women Voters is now planning to emulate this and put on their own conference. So thank you for the inspiration. Let me set the scene a little bit for you and tell you what the South Bay is, because the South Bay, some folks up in Northern California believe they have a South Bay, although it's north of our South Bay, and geographically I don't think they have a leg to stand on. San Diego, if they have a South Bay, would be the real South Bay, but I haven't heard from them yet. But our South Bay is defined by our South Bay Cities Councils of Government, our COG. You probably have a COG up here that you belong to, but our COG is made up of 15 different cities, and working your way down the coast, it's El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, Torrance. On our Palos Verdes Peninsula, we have 4 rich cities, Palos Verdes Estates, Rancho Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills, and Rolling Hills Estates. And then we have what we call our frontline communities. And we have a very diverse South Bay because we have our rich, primarily white, upscale communities along the beach. And then we have regular working class communities, Inglewood, Torrance, Hawthorne, Gardena, Lomita, Lawndale. These are called frontline cities because their residents are on the front lines of climate change. They have the freeways running right through their communities. Their communities are filled with refineries. We have the Chevron refinery in El Segundo, the ExxonMobil refinery, which just exploded last month in Torrance. We have refineries down in Wilmington, in Carson, and our other stationary sources of air pollution add to the fun breathing that we have there because we have Los Angeles Airport, and then we have the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, all within a 12-mile circle of my house. Those of us that live at the beach think that we're breathing just beautiful, wonderful, clean air. We have some of the worst air pollution down at the beach communities where I live because of those sources of air pollution. So that's why we think we need community choice, because as Jefferson so correctly said, every statewide agency, and in fact every national agency that's looked at this, has said that the single biggest tool we have in our toolkit to fight climate change in terms of reducing our emissions is a community choice aggregation program. And as you said so correctly too, we have what I always like to call proof of concept. Marin Clean Energy started operations in 2010. We passed the bill, by the way, in this state to allow for community choice aggregation back in 2002. It was AB 117. And yes, PG&E hated it, fought it tooth and nail, spent millions and millions of dollars, held up the development of the programs up north until 2010, until we were able to defeat them. And then we looked like we were going to get some momentum about a year ago when one of my representatives down in our area, and I'll take responsibility for Assemblyman Stephen Bradford, former SCE public affairs guy for 12 years, in the legislature was still SCE's guy, and he introduced AB 2145. AB 2145 became known as the CCA killer bill, and it was called the killer bill because it wanted to attack the opt-in nature of CCAs. And let me just take a moment to describe why that an opt-in is important. And first of all, let me just do a quick survey. How many of you opted into the utility you're currently with? Yes, that's what I thought. We don't have a choice right now. And the utilities, whether it's Southern California Edison or PG&E or San Diego Gas and Electric, could not do business if they had to have customers opt in. Just doesn't work. That's not human nature. We are not an opt-in society. We are an opt-out society. And so you could not start a CCA if you asked everybody to opt in. People don't know about it, they don't know what the benefits are, and you couldn't get it off the ground because you'd have no revenue stream. Right now, the law is that everybody in your community, if your city council passes a resolution to be part of this, every ratepayer is opted in. And then they get from 4 to 6 chances to opt out before the program ever starts. And every single month that the program is operating, they can opt out at any time. So that's never been an issue. But by having everyone opt in, you know from the beginning of your CCA, how many ratepayers do you have, how much money did they pay last year, and what's your revenue stream going to be? And once you understand in a business what your revenue stream is going to be over a course of a month or a year, you can borrow against that. You can do financial planning. You can't do that unless you have everyone opt in. And so then the question becomes, what's the percentage that makes this work? How many people have to stay in the program to make it viable? And we've seen opt-in stay rates in the 2 programs up north around 80%, and that's perfect. I think they haven't really gotten to the point where the numbers would be low enough to be a problem, but anything over 75% is going to be fine here. So, we're the South Bay Clean Power Group. What does that mean? Let me tell you a little bit of how we got to be the South Bay Clean Power Group. About a year ago, in the city of Manhattan Beach, I'm with 350, the South Bay version, and we partner with cities in our area to do climate programs. And we partner with the city of Manhattan Beach, and a year ago, together, we came up with a very ambitious vision of 100% renewable powered community in 10 years. And then we put on a forum similar to this, and we invited experts from around the country and up and down the state to tell the city what avenues they might take to get there. And so we had somebody from the 100% Renewable Institute. We had folks from our county talking about all the programs that'll put free solar on your roof and let you borrow against your property taxes. We had solar people. We had solar mosaic people there talking about crowdsourcing. But the person that was the superstar at our forum was a gentleman named Cordell Stillman, who came down from Sonoma Clean Power a month before they launched their program. And he gave a presentation similar to Jefferson's, explaining what a CCA was to us. He told us all about Marin's success, and then he outlined their program elements. And after our forum was over, the environmentalists looked at each other and said, why the hell don't we have this here? And so we started to put together a working group. And it was only 4 or 5 of us, and we started to do the research. And then we got lucky. And you can get lucky too, because we had our university, UCLA, one of their graduate programs does free studies for communities and for nonprofits. And the city of Hermosa Beach employed them to do a free study on how they could decarbonize their electric supply. And lo and behold, the results of that study from UCLA Environment and Sustainability said, you should form a CCA with other South Bay cities. And the benefit of that study wasn't just that statement, but they did in-depth research and they got us all of the electric load information from all of our South Bay cities. And that's what costs you money. Your utility will charge you, your city, to give you the amount, your load data and tell you how much energy you're using. But that's a first step in forming any kind of CCA, is to know how much energy you have. So we got lucky and Hermosa Beach had that study done, and then Hermosa Beach said, we want to do this. And so they passed the resolution to participate in a feasibility study. And that's the first step. You got to have your cities and your counties and the entities that want to be in a CCA program agree to participate in a feasibility study. And let me be frank, you need that information from the feasibility study, but our electeds also need it to cover their ass. And nobody wants to say yes to a big, expensive program without some data saying, look, we had numbers. We did the research. We did our due diligence. We know this works. So we have a benefit because we have that UCLA research already done. And then we got lucky a second time because one of our other cities, Torrance, one of their city councilmen who we had briefed on this topic, said, hey, I went to the Price School of Policy at USC, and you know, we do free studies on stuff like this. And I said, really? UCLA does too. And he said, we're going to get them to do a study for our city of Torrance, and we'll do a pre-feasibility study. And they did. Maybe a month it only took. And that came back with incredible data that we were able to convince Torrance to participate in the feasibility study with. And what that data showed, and that we were just thrilled with, was it quantified economic investment in the city, which would come with a CCA. It quantified how many jobs would come with a CCA, and I'll talk about where investment and jobs come from in a minute. And then it did the most blessed thing. It identified 84 brownfield sites in the city of Torrance. Brownfield sites are designated by the EPA, usually contaminated by an oil or petroleum company. And they're plots of land that you cannot develop because they have been contaminated with toxins. But one thing you can do with brownfield sites is build solar farms on them. Solar doesn't care. And so in Torrance, home of the ExxonMobil refinery, we have the potential for 544 megawatts of solar on brownfield sites alone. And in our South Bay, we have brownfield sites more than we deserve. We have them in Gardena. We have them in Hawthorne. We have them in Inglewood, where they want to build a new football stadium for the team from St. Louis right now. So these things came together in a fortunate way for us because they gave us momentum and power. So did this AB 2145. It's the best thing that could have happened to us. Even though it was a miserable summer, we had to spend fighting and lobbying and actually going to Sacramento to yell at the people who were lying about this. And basically that bill, AB 2145, said that opting everybody into a program like this was the equivalent of telephone slamming, that people had no choice and they didn't know what was happening. And so we made the same argument in Sacramento. We asked all of the electeds how many of them had opted into their current program, and that pretty much put the end to the opt-in, opt-out question. But what 2145 did was coalesced all of us up and down the state because we got together to fight this bill, and there were over 200 organizations and cities that signed letters of opposition to this. And once we beat this bill, and that was a very sweet time at the very last minute of the session in Sacramento, we had a coalition that was ready now to turn again from fighting a bill to helping all of the communities up and down the state that want to form a CCA. And that's how we came to form the coalition that is Californians for Energy Choice. And we're now working pro bono, all of us, to help organizations and cities like yours and counties move forward on this. So let's go to the next slide, or the first slide actually, and tell you what happened. So we formed a working group, and that would be, I would suggest, your first step. A working group of citizens from all of the different areas that want to be part of a CCA, each of the cities. And we included staff members in this because we have some very enthusiastic environmental staff people in the city of Santa Monica, in the city of Manhattan Beach, and in the city of Hermosa Beach. So those three cities have staff members on our working group, but the rest of us are leaders of environmental organizations or business owners or concerned citizens. And we got together to plan our attack, basically. And we got together, put together a strategy of how many cities that we wanted to work with and how would we approach those cities. But before we did that, we had to agree on what the mission and the goals of our CCA were. Because this is community choice and because there are so many options available to you, you can have a community choice program of almost any flavor. But we know where we are, and those of us that started this movement, that our flavor wants to be the maximum amount of renewable energy possible, the most renewable energy possible on a local distributed basis, and local renewable energy that produces jobs in our community, and those jobs are paid for by local investment. So let me give you an example of that. If we had a brownfield site, we would like to have folks in the community form, for the sake of an argument, let's say an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And we would like local investors to pay for that solar farm, and we would like local investors to then get the 20-year contract from our local CCA to sell energy to our CCA. And then we'd like local, ideally union members in a workforce agreement to build that solar farm. So we're then able to keep money in the community, give people a great investment. Let me tell you, I'm going to retire in about 3 years. I would love to have an investment in a CCA because there's one bill that everybody pays, and it's their electric bill, and they pay it every month, and that money comes in as revenue month after month after month. It's why for years and years, utilities have been a fantastic investment if you're going to have a retirement portfolio. So we brought our working group together, and we carefully put that group together so that they would encompass the same mission and goals that we cared about. And so let's take a look at the next slide, because the first step we did was form a, thank you. You're incredible. Our mission and goals, and look, we didn't invent this. We took a look at Marin and Sonoma's programs, and we modeled our mission and goals after them. And as you can see, first on our list is reducing greenhouse gas emissions from energy generation. I won't read it all, but it's about what I just talked about. It's about local, it's about renewable, and it's about providing a secure energy supply at stable and competitive prices. We don't know if we're always going to be able to beat the utility in price, but we think we can. You heard some of the reasons here. Another reason that we can is our CCA is never going to pay the kind of salaries and bonuses that the people at the for-profit monopoly utilities pay. We're just not going to do that. And we're not going to operate that way either. Neither Sonoma or Marin is operating that way. And if you want to get rich and have a really high-paying career, this is not the career for you. This is service. So we also believe very strongly that every watt we save is a watt we don't have to generate. That's not news either. But energy efficiency as a part of these programs is huge, and that's where more jobs come from too, because when you really put an emphasis on energy efficiency and you take a look at how much of our building stock is not up to energy efficiency standards, that's low-hanging fruit that we could be employing people all day long to put in insulation, to put in double-pane windows, to take our buildings up and down this state and make them energy efficient instead of having them leak energy as they currently do. Finally, I think I talked about local economies and stimulation. So, can I do this? Which one? Oh, yes. So our question then became, well, how much energy do we need? How many cities? And there is no rule book. We couldn't go to any place and find out you need minimum of this many cities or minimum of this much power. So we did the obvious thing. We took a look at the two existing programs and how many cities and how much power they had. And you can see here, this is Marin Clean Energy's program. And I'll say about this that all of these cities were not with the program when they started. Both Marin and Sonoma, after they launched, had cities that sat on the sidelines at first. Once they saw the proof of concept working in both of those places, those cities then joined the program. And we expect that to happen in all of the places where CCAs start. There'll be a core group of founding cities that know from the beginning that they want to do this. And then there'll be other cities that are more cautious and just want to wait and see. So in the case of Marin, Richmond, their largest city and biggest power user, was not part of the program when the program started, but they joined later. So what we learned from Marin is we needed at least 1.9 gigawatt hours of energy from our cities, and so we took that as a ballpark. And then we took a look at Sonoma, and you can see Sonoma's use, and then we saw, okay, they're at 2.1, basically, gigawatt hours. So somewhere around 2 gigawatts was what we decided, well, that's got to be it. If we have that as a minimum, then we'll have a viable program that we can talk about. So we took a look at our 15 cities in the South Bay, and boy, did we have a lot of energy. We have almost 4 gigawatts, and so we decided, yeah, we can do this. We don't know if we can get every one of our cities on board, but we knew that we could get enough of these cities because we had been talking to them. And then a magical thing happened to us. We had our 15-city plan of our South Bay, and then the wonderful city of Santa Monica, just to the north of us, who is not part of our COG, said, hey, we've been trying to do a CCA for years, and we haven't gotten any traction. Can we join your program? Well, we said, hell yeah, because Santa Monica has a great big budget for sustainability and environment. They have a terrific program, and they have a gentleman named Dean Kubani who's been running that program for 20 years and knows everybody. So we considered that an asset for us. So all of a sudden, we had 16 cities, and we had a potential of almost 4 gigawatt hours. It's a lot of energy. So what did we do? Our plan was to visit with each individual council person in every one of our target cities and give them a briefing. And believe me, 9 out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100 of the people you talk to will have never heard of a CCA. And when you mentioned it to them, they will be completely confused. But it's a pretty simple operation to describe. I mean, it's basically a hybrid between having a investor-owned utility as we have now and having a municipal-owned utility. And the difference between the two is that in a municipal-owned utility, the municipality owns all of the infrastructure, all the lines, all the wires, responsible for all of that. In this particular hybrid of the two, we control the power generation and the purchasing and procurement of it, but we leave the transmission and the delivery to the monopoly utility. And let me say, if your area here is like our area, there's a palatable animosity toward the utility because the service is so poor. Because we have so many intermittent power interruptions and sometimes unexpected power interruptions. And the sad part of it is that we can't change that with the CCA. We don't own those wires, but one thing we can change is the amount of leverage we have as a customer. Because when we go to Edison in the future with our 16 cities worth of energy, we're all of a sudden their biggest customer in the area. And when we have a problem, they're going to have a problem. So what we've been doing is meeting with each council person one by one and each city manager. And we have not had any difficulty whatsoever in getting cities and city managers to agree to participate in a feasibility study. Why? Because we go to them and we say, this is a non-binding resolution that will cost you nothing. And we told every city that we went to that we would get the funding for the feasibility study. We were completely blowing smoke. We had nothing. But what we did have was the knowledge that Alameda County Board of Supervisors last year voted unanimously to fund their feasibility study and about $3 million worth of development costs. And then just about a month and a half ago, our friends in San Mateo County Board of Supervisors did likewise. And they passed a motion to completely fund their feasibility study and all related development costs. Now, why would they do this? Very simple. They get every penny of that money back when the program is up and running. The only risk they have is if there is no program, and we know there will be a program because we've already got enough traction and momentum. So we got Hermosa Beach was easy because the UCLA told them they should do this. Torrance was easy because USC told them they would do it. Manhattan Beach, the other cities, all of a sudden, once you start to get cities past the resolution, other cities don't want to be left out. There is a highly competitive nature to politics and to intercity and intercounty relationships. And so it was very important for us when we talked to our Board of Supervisors to tell them that Alameda and San Mateo County had already funded their programs, and we challenged them on their own pride. And if you know elected officials, and I know you guys do, you know there's a certain amount of ego involved. And so, I know. Well, that's why we love Santa Barbara. But we told our supervisors, you're not going to allow Alameda County and San Mateo County to get ahead of us on this and eat our lunch, are you? And of course they weren't. And so we were lucky enough to get the Republican on our Board of Supervisors. We have two, Don Kanabe, working with one of the more liberal Democrats, Sheila Kuehl, newly elected in the Santa Monica area. And they both jointly offered a motion on St. Patrick's Day to fund the first step of our feasibility program. And they're funding $150,000, and the reason it's $150,000 is we told them that's how much Alameda County had funded. And so they were happy to match it. So that's our ambitious plan, and we told our Board of Supervisors representatives that when we had 6 or 7 cities and we knew we were going to have enough power to make this viable, that we would come to them and ask for the money, and we did, and I've never had an easier ask or get. These were the 7 cities that we had as our core founding program when we said that we would come back to them with a viable number of cities. We already had 2.9 gigawatts of energy, bigger than either of the other 2 programs, with just those 7 cities. And those 7 cities also happen to be a strategic mix of upscale white communities with frontline working class communities, because frankly, we wouldn't want to do this program if it was only going to benefit the well-off. This program will have tremendous benefits for frontline communities, and from a standpoint of conscience, we couldn't do it if we didn't include our brothers and sisters in those communities. Our friends at LEAN, he mentioned before, the Local Energy Aggregation Network, the nonprofit. We've been working with them from the beginning. They've been fantastic. They provide free services to groups like ours, technical services. When we gave cities copies of the resolution we were asking them to pass, that template came from our friends at LEAN. They came down in November and we did a study session for electeds and staff members, and they generated this information based on our 7-city core program, and they told us that if we had those 7 cities in a program, that was worth $2.31 billion a year, and that's 7 of our 16 cities. So all of a sudden, people were taking notice that this was a big deal in terms of how much money was involved too. It's not when you talk community choice and you're an environmentalist, it sounds very granola and patchouli, but when you talk 2.3 billion, everybody sits up and notices. Then we got some more help, and you have this help too, because the governor in his State of the State in January put forth some very bold proposals. And that would have been nice, but it's even better because our state president of the Senate, Senator Kevin De Leon, introduced about a month and a half ago what he calls SB 350. And it's not named after South Bay 350, although I'd like to take credit for it. It's actually 350% initiatives. And here's what is going to get passed in our state probably this year. 1, an increase of our renewable portfolio standard, which is currently 33% by 2020. That's going to increase to 50% by 2030. In just 15 years, we're going to have half of our energy come from renewable by mandate. Number 2, we are going to, by law, under SB 350, cut our use of petroleum in the state of California in half, by 50%, in those same 15 years for transportation. And the third involves energy efficiency, and that is bringing 50% of our building stock in the state of California up to current energy efficiency standards. Very ambitious. You would think that we couldn't get this passed, but the governor's already behind it. The Democrats control both sides of the House, and they have lined up union support, support from the utilities, businesses. They did a very good job in their press conference in lining up the votes that they have to make this happen. So there's also an increase. You all know about AB 32, our Global Warming Solutions Act, the pride of our state in terms of environmentalism. That's getting strengthened now with the new proposed SB 32, which will make that even stronger. Just for sake of argument, when we went to our Board of Supervisors, we had this information for them when we asked them for money. That was when we only had Alameda County's staff report and financials. Now we have San Mateo County's, and that made it even easier. Jefferson spoke about this event on May 18th. This event is happening because of our effort in South Bay. We went to the county and told them what we were doing before they knew what we were doing. And we were lucky again because the head of energy for Los Angeles County, a gentleman named Howard Choi, when we told him about the progress we had made, unbeknownst to him, he said, "I am ecstatic. We have always wanted Los Angeles County to have a CCA, and we would like to have the largest CCA in the state." Los Angeles County has 88 cities. The cities in Los Angeles County that are not eligible for the CCA are those that are served by municipal utility districts. So any of the cities, Los Angeles City and some of the cities in the Valley who are DWP customers, Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles, not eligible for CCA. Nor is Glendale has their own municipal utility district, so too is Pasadena. But we have over 75 cities that will be eligible. And then that brings up a whole new question that no CCA has yet to have faced. How many cities is too many cities? because I've been telling people, and you'll be telling people, this is about local control. And when I talk to my 16 cities that we're targeting, I tell them that each one of you is going to have a seat at the table. Every one of your cities will have a seat at that table, and we'll make decisions together. But a seat at the table with one of 15 is quite different than a seat at the table of one of 75. And so the feasibility study now becomes even more important for us, because that's a new question that feasibility studies haven't yet asked, but we expect to get answered in ours. We have our own gut feeling, and that is that 75 is too many. And we have a year's head start with our South Bay Clean Power Program, because we've already educated our 16 cities, and we have not only the 6 that have signed resolutions, but the city of Beverly Hills has now raised their hand and wants to be part of our program, and they will pass their resolution on the 21st of this month. It's on the consent calendar. We have met in the last 2 weeks with Malibu, with Palos Verdes Estates, and with Inglewood, and we expect those to join. When the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors gave us their funding, they also gave their staff 90 days to come back with a report on how they could form a CCA countywide. So we moved very quickly to ask our state senator, Ben Allen, who we had kept in the loop all along, and I advise you to reach out to your assembly people, to your state senator, to your Congress people. Lois Capps should be a big supporter of this before she leaves. We've had Ted Lieu's support in our area, but we also asked Ben Allen to write a letter to our Board of Supervisors, thanking them, congratulating them, and recommending that our South Bay program be the pilot for the countywide program. And the reason that we want that to happen more than any other is environmental. We know what we stand for, and we know how strict we're going to be about cutting emissions and about how fast we add renewable power. We don't know how our other cities throughout the county are going to be. So our attitude is we want them to opt into our program. And we have a year's head start, and these programs are all incremental. So if you pass a program here, it's not going to be everybody flip the switch and you're all in the CCA from day one. It'll roll out typically with businesses first, and then an X number of residentials. It takes about a year to get everybody on board. So since there's an incremental nature anyway, and there has to be a core group of cities to start with, we're making a strong case that that core group be ours, and that the other cities then in their own time evaluate. If they have to wait for our proof of concept, that's fine, but they can opt into our program later, and then we'll have to decide how big do we want our program to be? And we think we get to choose that, because this is all about community choice. That's your choice too, and I encourage you to be bold. One thing I know from negotiating in many, many years, 2 things actually. 1, you don't ask, you don't get. 2, you better ask for more than you want, because they're going to cut it down. And so if you've ever sold a house, you know about asking price and selling price. This is not an irrational market that we're in, so nobody's going to give us more than we ask for. So ask for a lot, and ask persistently and relentlessly, and you will get it. This is a program that has no viable opposition. The only opposition to this program are shareholders from the monopoly utility companies who are afraid that they're going to get their gravy train caught. And that's everything I've got to say for today. I hope I didn't go too long. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take our usual about 10-minute break and then come
Okay,
back.
so
So we're ready to start? And first question here.
Thank you. I have solar on my roof, and I was wondering, my question is, how can I store solar energy so that I can use it later when I need it? Is there a way of doing that now or not?
That's all right. I'll take first crack. I'm sure Jefferson has some answers. But yes, we live in an era now where battery storage is entirely possible on a homeowner basis. We have some friends that are doing it now. Usually, up to this point, battery storage for solar has been for folks that are not connected to the grid, in a remote cabin where you don't have any electricity at night. But if you've heard of the Tesla Giga battery plant that they're building next door, I believe it's in Nevada, their intent is to build half of those batteries for non-automotive use, meaning homes. And it's kind of what we call disruptive business practices, because if those batteries are inexpensive enough, many people with solar will consider going to the battery and going off the grid, primarily because the utilities are taking such an antagonistic and aggressive action against people with solar. For instance, I know SCE has a proposal on the table. I don't know if it's been approved by the PUC, but it will charge a standard $10 a month fee whether you use any electricity or not. And their claim is, you solar people, you're getting a free ride on the grid. You're using our wires. And I like to say, I've lived in California since 1976, and I've been paying for the grid every month ever since. At what point do I own a wire?
Okay, question here.
Hello, everyone. Eric Friedman representing Supervisor Carbajal. And I just want to first thank Joe and Jefferson for a great presentation and the league for putting this on. And your timing couldn't have been more perfect because over the next 2 months, the future of CCE, not to confuse with CEC, but, is now in our county. There's going to be a lot of movement. They mentioned at the city of Santa Barbara, at the county, we have our May 5th meeting. Where our planning staff has been working with Supervisors Carbajal and Wolf and CEC to do a presentation similar to this before our board to understand what it is. And that's important because 2 weeks later, I want to be important for you to show up if you can to support CEC at that hearing. We'd love to have you there. But also 2 weeks later, on the 19th of May, the Board of Supervisors is hearing their Energy and Climate Action Plan. And one of the big items on that is the greenhouse gas thresholds. So CCE goes a long way towards meeting those thresholds. So having the support of this would go a long way towards giving the board options on how to achieve a greater thresholds. So we hope that to see you on the 5th and then also be aware of the 19th. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. And I'd like to say that Supervisor Carbajal and Supervisor Wolf have been great champions for the community choice movement here in the county, and we're thankful for their work.
And let me just add, too, because I know Salud Carbajal. I served with him on the Green Government Advisory Board at National Association of Counties. He is a true climate champion. I wish that we had a Salud Carbajal where I live.
Okay, raise hands again for questions. Okay,
How long would it take
Straight.
to,
well,
how long would it take to install the solar? I mean, assuming that we form the CE,
You could call it just community choice.
right, community choice, and, went through all the channels, then how long would it take to actualize it? When would we?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuances to that question. One is, how long does it take to get a community choice program up and running? And I think the biggest factor that really determines that is how much political will there is and how quickly do you want to move. With the city of Lancaster, in Lancaster they had a mayor that was super aggressive. And their mayor's famously quoted as saying about climate change, he says, "I might be a Republican, but I'm not an idiot." And he basically decided that community choice was something that they wanted to make happen in Lancaster, and their timetable has been really short. I don't know the exact dates, but less than 2 years, I want to say, that they've been able, and they're going to be launching later this year. So a community choice program, with the will, you can get it up really quickly. But what we need here, and what's going on, and what they're about to get in South Bay, is a feasibility study that gives us those answers. So we want to get that feasibility study done as quickly as possible. Then we can have the numbers, and then we can go out and get this started.
And I would just add that you don't have to wait to install the solar to start a CCA. There is already excess renewable energy available on the marketplace. So one of the first things your CCA is going to do is go to the same marketplace that the utilities are buying solar from and other renewable energies, wind and geothermal, for two other examples. And your CCA, once formed, is going to go looking to buy that energy on that market as well.
Question of storage. Germany's running into problems right now. When you get up to over 10% of renewables, you have a big problem of where to store the energy because of the fluctuations of alternative energies. So we're going to have to deal with this in California, and I understand that we'll be hitting that ceiling soon. So as you form a local community choice and you want to produce your own energy, you're going to run up to the same threshold that other countries are running up to right now. So that'll be a big question, producing our own energies is the storage question on a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that Joe touched on that a little bit when he was talking about what Tesla's doing with their battery storage technology. And energy storage is an essential piece. As you're adding more renewables, you're going to need a place to store that energy because, the sun doesn't shine through the night, and that's when really our peak load is starting, at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. when people come home from work. So energy storage is going to be an important piece. And there's actually people in this room that are working towards answering that energy storage piece locally. I don't know if anybody from the World Business Academy, do you guys want to talk about what your programs are? Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Quickly, the World Business Academy is very focused on these questions because we see, as CEC does and as Joe does, the optimal solution for a domestic energy system in town here or in the South County being a energy system that produces as much of the energy it uses locally as possible, and that requires storage. We believe that there are advances being made right now in the hydrogen field, where hydrogen could be made with excess renewable energy at peak from solar energy, and then stored and then used later in the day, or when we actually have a real shortfall in fuel cells. The implementation pathway is a little bit complicated. I don't have time to get into it now, but we see hydrogen as actually the best storage mechanism for the long term. Batteries probably in the short term, the 5-hour window, but hydrogen is a way that we can actually have a strategic reserve of energy in case we get a really big series of storms. The technology has advanced in leaps and bounds in just the last few years. The numbers are better than the scientists or the policymakers will tell you right now. And we're working with the National Fuel Cell Research Laboratory at UC Irvine to back up our findings. And we recently filed on this issue and the transmission issue in the California Public Utilities Commission hearing on the Moore Park service area, which we're a part of. So if you want more information about that, I can give you my card. It's also on our website at worldbusiness.org.
Is there a question over here then? Okay, one. Well, there's. Okay, we'll start with Linda.
People in the middle just confuse us.
Well, I hope my comment doesn't confuse you. And this is really more of a comment than a question. But in your excellent presentation, both of the speakers mentioned AB 2145 last year, which would have made it pretty near impossible to start a CCA. And I wanted to make sure everybody knows that the League of Women Voters of California did oppose that bill. We were one of the organizations that,
Thank you.
that opposed it. And so I am hoping that that helps us to get a CCA here.
Yeah, I'd also like to add to that there's a number of other people that wrote letters in opposition to AB 2145 in the room. Councilmember Kathy Murillo wrote a letter. Supervisor Carbajal and Supervisor Wolf also wrote letters in opposition to that. So thanks to them.
I wanted to ask Jeff, listening to Joe made me feel that the South Coast may be entirely too small to have their own CCE. And I wondered if you'd talk about how we could get enough volume to make it work.
That's a fantastic question, and it is definitely a question, and it's a question that we want to see answered through a feasibility study. We are already talking with the people in San Luis Obispo. There's an organization called Slow Clean Energy that's working. They actually got a resolution passed out of the city of San Luis Obispo, I think about 2 weeks ago now, and the city of Morro Bay as well. So they're working on that, and it's something that in a feasibility study we would look at. coupling with San Luis Obispo County, coupling with Ventura. And there's people in Ventura as well actively pursuing community choice, and we're in communication with them.
And I've looked at the Slow Clean Energy program. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Colin. Thank you both. Very informative. I learned a lot. I appreciate that. One thing I didn't hear, I'm a numbers person, how long would a feasibility study take and how much would it cost?
I'll start off with that. One of the things that is a tremendous benefit of so much development of CCAs going on in the state right now is that the price of feasibility studies continues to drop. And the reason that it continues to drop is because part of it is boilerplate. When you do a feasibility study, there's a great big section on what is a CCA. Then there's another great big section on where are CCAs currently operating. And those don't need to be written from scratch anymore. As we have more and more CCAs and more feasibility studies, the cost goes down because we're able to use so much of the information, boilerplate, if you will, from the previous studies, and it really boils down then to just the study in your area. So for a ballpark number, Alameda County put in $150,000 for their feasibility study, and that breaks down to $100,000 for the study, $50,000 for a peer review. I believe Alameda County's peer review might be as low as $60,000 in the budget. So I would say that for a safe argument, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 for a feasibility study.
Yeah, the number that we've been talking about to local officials is $100,000 for a feasibility study. We think we could safely get it done with that. But, given what's happened down with South Bay Clean Energy in San Mateo, maybe we might leverage a little ego and say that they should put in $150,000 as well.
Why not?
This question is for Joe mainly. I'm a volunteer with the World Business Academy, and we're looking at doing a microgrid as part of the CCA, for the whole local area. You guys must have thought about that. How can you put in power plants, solar fields, or storage facilities, that physical infrastructure, without having something like a microgrid present?
First of all, we would love to have a microgrid, and the succinct answer to your question is we haven't gotten the answer to that question yet from Marin and Sonoma. So if microgrids are allowed in a CCA program, we will be strong advocates of them because we want to have so much distributed generation. And the other argument that we will make on behalf of microgrids that is very effective at the local level is it's a homeland security issue as well. And when we talk about storage, we speak usually in a first wave of storage at municipal, fire, police, emergency, city hall. So a microgrid that kept all of those facilities operating regardless of circumstances is a great way to branch it out because it's a very easy sell to the community and to the electeds to take care of it at the municipal level first. But technically speaking, I don't know what's allowed, and maybe you do, Jefferson, with microgrids?
I'm not sure about the very technical questions about, what in terms of actual transmission infrastructure you would need. I think I'd defer to WBA on that one.
And I will get an answer to your question from Sonoma and Marin, so it's just an email, and I'm sorry I didn't do it before this.
Why would it not be allowed?
Well, right now, all of the infrastructure is under the purview of the utilities. So the question then becomes, does the CCA allow for infrastructure additions? Obviously, it does in terms of generation, but once you get into microgrid, then it's a gray area about transmission and delivery.
Okay. Charlene in the middle.
I'm wondering if anyone has approached UCSB for funding or executing our feasibility study.
That's a fantastic question, and actually UCSB has approached us about community choice. Not necessarily funding the feasibility study. It's actually something that we considered, maybe doing a feasibility study through a Bren School group project. But we started looking at the timeline for that, and we wouldn't get our results until next April. So we want to get a feasibility study done as quickly as possible so we can move forward. But we have been approached by UCSB. UCSB has their own mandates to go carbon neutral. And so community choice is one thing that helps them do that. And so they have said, at least some individuals at the university working on their zero net carbon initiative have said that they would work to progress community choice here in Santa Barbara County.
That's great.
I'd like to do a follow-up on Connie's question when she was inquiring whether South County had enough population and generation to sustain a community choice project. We're also a county that's divided by two different utilities, Southern California Edison in the south, PG&E in the north, so I got confused when you started talking about SLO, but I do know that Southern California Edison services Ventura County. So can you comment on that and also the success of Das Williams' bill that's trying to address the split county issue on our behalf?
Yeah, first I'll take Das Williams' bill. That bill actually got pulled because that split county issue is not as much of a challenge as we initially thought that it was. When you enter into this is getting into the weeds a little bit, I apologize. But when you enter into a power purchase agreement, that agreement is just to deliver the power to a certain place on the California Independent System Operators grid. It's not necessarily an agreement to deliver that power all the way to your home. So entering into power purchase agreements across a split jurisdiction isn't necessarily a challenge. So that technical challenge does not exist. And we went and talked to the energy data managers that work with Marin and Sonoma about that question, and they said it's not an issue. Where it does become a little bit of an issue is where you're you're working in two different markets, so you're going to have a little bit more administrative costs, more contracts, more legal costs, and it could potentially be challenging offering the same price in PG&E and Edison territories because you'll have slightly different cost structures.
I had a quick question about the social justice angle here. I'm wondering if there are measures that can be taken or built in that can make sure that the rates on lower income people don't rise. And I've heard some talk about the difference in price structure when you have that comparison chart between PG&E rates versus Marin Clean Energy rates. I've heard that if you have a lower bill, sometimes you're actually paying a higher percentage of an increase. Do you guys know anything about that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I know that I asked Marin about power company programs like low-income aid and efficiency rebates, et cetera, to find out if those continue in a CCA program, and their response was, with MCE, all low-income assistance programs, care, medical baseline, et cetera, remain unchanged by the CCA service. But you're asking a different question, and I haven't heard it asked, and I don't know what the answer is.
Mm-hmm. So community choice programs can set their own rate structures and their own tariffs. When they initially set their tariffs, they do have to be approved by the PUC. When they initially set those tariffs, they set them to be as similar or parallel to the existing PG&E tariff structures just to make the transition simpler. But as you move forward, there are options for that.
Hi, I have a question over here. And this is about the transmission lines. Okay, so in the beginning, if I understand correctly, the existing utility, in our case, Southern California Edison, owns the lines, and so they have to allow the CCA to go ahead and use those lines, correct? They don't have a choice, and they cannot charge.
No, they do charge.
They do charge.
And when we had the slide up on the rate structure, Marin and Sonoma are able to charge a lower rate per customer, even with the delivery and exit charges put
Okay.
on by PG&E.
I was in the back and I couldn't read all of those clearly. Now, going forward, over the years, if the commercial producers, it's no longer as feasible because they are losing business, so their revenue is coming down, and then one of the ways they can cut is possibly by not maintaining the lines as well. Is there a point ultimately where the community choice has to begin to build their own lines or buy lines? How is that handled in the long term?
So the existing community choice law is very clear in the distinction that transmission still remains with the existing utility. So under the law as it's written now, transmission will still be Southern California Edison or PG&E. Yeah.
And the Public Utilities Commission has the same authority over CCAs as it does with the other utilities. And so the laws regarding upkeep of infrastructure will still apply.
Just on that point. Just on that point. I know. Oh, there we are. On that point, as far as having control or influence over management of distribution and transmission infrastructure, is this a potential opportunity for CCAs as the movement grows to collaborate and form their own political voice for purposes of influencing policy at the state level in this regard?
Well, that's already happening. Both Marin and Sonoma are members of the coalition that we're members of, and both worked very closely with us and very fervently against AB 2145.
Yeah. And the coalition has a separate committee that is tracking legislation at the state level. So as soon as something's coming out, we're aware about it and we're talking about it and what that means for community choice efforts across the entire state.
And Marin and Sonoma have paid lobbyists, unlike our grassroots efforts. Like when we were doing AB 2145 opposition, we had grassroots people there, but they had their lobbyists following the lobbyists of the IBW and PG&E.
Just a couple of comments. In full disclosure, for 10 years I was the head of CEC, but I was also for 10 years the head of ICE CCAs at Edison. So I know how both sides of this work. The thing that makes CCAs in Edison's territory work really well are the kind of things that South Bay is doing or Lancaster is doing, which is to build infrastructure and to make that work. The thing that is difficult here, and I totally agree that if you can make microgrids work here, it would be an ideal way to combine these two efforts. The thing that has worked the hardest against microgrids here has been the political will. It's actually been stopped by both the county and the city. So if it's going to happen, there's got to be the political will, especially on the county's part, to let it happen. The second is that just as a piece of information, the transmission lines might be owned by PG&E or Edison, but they're under the control of the state's independent system operator. They're the ones who decide how it's going to be maintained and how it's going to be paid for, because they're the ones who control it. So it's not really a question of whether Edison or PG&E feel good about or don't want to maintain the line. They don't have anything really to say about it. They may technically own it, but they're told by the state what to do to make sure that it works.
And this came about as a result of deregulation, as you know, too, which separated the transmission from the production.
It's funny that Hal preceded me because I wanted to ask, nobody has, is the utility prepared here to spend $40 million to defeat our efforts to get one of these? And what do we know about what their thinking is these days?
Yeah, I think I'll take the first stab at that question. First of all, Edison actually has, compared to PG&E, has a very, very good reputation in Southern California. And we do have experience now with Southern California Edison working with Lancaster. And at the Sustainability Summit in October, we had the Deputy City Administrator come from Lancaster and talk about their experience launching up there and what it was like working with Southern California Edison. And he depicted them as partners with a single picture. And that picture was of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman.
The Justice League.
Yep. Basically saying that Edison was a fantastic partner moving community choice forward, to the point that they were actually giving them suggestions about ways in which the process could be more efficient. So we're very optimistic that Edison would be a fantastic partner.
But CCAs were put in place during the energy crisis in 2001. That's why they came about. And 38 cities in Southern California, Edison's territory, signed up to have potential for CCAs. Actually, only 3 actually took advantage of it, and all 3 of those didn't work. Now, there are reasons why it didn't work, and why one of the reasons, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but it cost some cities almost to the point of bankruptcy. That is not necessarily the way it needs to go forward. And so what they're really trying to do is help Lancaster and like South Bay structure these in a way that don't do what those failed systems actually did. Because there's no reason to get into doing it that way. And what they're doing by creating separate agencies is actually the way to make it happen. Now, we had one that I thought was going to work when I was working there, which was in the Kings River CCA over in San Joaquin Valley, and it just happened to be that we butt up against PG&E in that project the same way. They're here in the same county. And we were diametrically opposed to one another in terms of how we handled that. And PG&E spent a lot of money trying to stop it. And, we were trying to convince them they were crazy to do that. But, it's like it was barking at, we weren't going to win that battle with them. The problem with they have, I don't know what their issue was. Our problem had nothing to do with whether the utility, because the utility has nothing to gain or lose whether it's a CCA. Edison doesn't make money off power. By law, for 30 years, it's been restricted. It can't make a dime off selling power. So it has no reason to oppose a CCA. The issue has been more about making sure the cities and the local governments don't get into a risk situation that falls back on Edison or somebody else, and they have to pick up the pieces, and then it costs them a lot of money. So they just want to make sure when it's done in a way that is really financially stable and doesn't cause a collapse that falls back on them.
There any other questions? Okay, I'll make a wrap-up comment. And that is, again, when we started into this, we didn't know what CCAs were, and when we were talking to people, the people we talked to didn't know what CCAs are. Okay, CCAs are an unintentional secret. And it's going to take an awful lot of community support to get a CCA going here. You're getting budget issues, you're getting questions on feasibility study funding, you're getting money that's going to have to be voted for to get startup money to go out and fund the purchases of your first go-around of power. And so community support is extremely important. And so please don't keep this a secret. You can blab. You can tell anybody you can about CCAs. Okay, now I want to thank our 2 speakers who I think did a tremendous job. Appreciate that. And thanks to all the league workers who helped supply the food, the tables, the setup, and all the equipment.
And just to end up, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. And please know that on May 20th, our forum topic is money in politics at the federal, state, and local level. And we encourage you all to come again for that topic. And the May meeting is our final forum. We also invite you once again to become a member of the League of Women Voters. Men and women are welcome, and anyone over 18. So bring your young people as well. Colin? And in September, our forums will start up again. They're always on the third Wednesday of the month. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you both. Thank you so much. Of course, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.